Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome to another tutorial. Today we're going to be in After Effects, and we're going to be working on creating a sort of a energy Kamehameha tutorial. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we're going to be creating. Alright, so what we have here is we have me running up, powering up, just ignore that flash there. We have this energy orb coming around, and some little tiny particles emitting from my hand, and an energy ball, and I bring it around and shoot it out. Now, this is actually a pretty simple tutorial, and it does have a fair amount of elements, but we'll go through each of them individually. So first off, we have some color correction just slapped on there, and we have our blast here, and then we have our optical flare, which is the external flare using from Video Copilot, and we have the light that I attracted to, our aura, second aura, our first one, our hand particles, and displacement map, which you can see here, that kind of spreads out from me, and we have both of those. So let's go ahead and delete all of this. Actually, let me save this first. Alright. So here's our footage, me running up and shooting a blast. And first thing you'll notice is this face right here. That is the face of a champion. Anyways, so what we're going to do is we're going to go and do the sort of displacement that comes around my body as I power up. So what we need to do is create a new solid, Control Y, or go to Layer, New Solid, and you're going to make it red. And it's very important that you make it red. Red. There we go. Okay. So now we're going to go to our ellipse tool, and we're going to click somewhere in the center, press Control and Shift, and make one about that large. Okay. Now let's go to our mask here, and we'll just duplicate the mask by pressing Control D, and set the second one to subtract. So we have nothing. And what we can do is, let's go into our pan behind tool and take our center position, and just move it more or less the center. Okay, so let's press MM on our keyboard to bring up our feather properties, and take the second mask and lower the expansion, and then feather that out a good bit, maybe not so much. That looks pretty good. Now we'll go down here to the bottom of the mask and lower this, and maybe raise that up, and we'll do the same on this side. Just bring, raise this up a little bit, so we kind of get this orb effect. Alright, so now we're going to basically adjust the scale and the position for it. So press S and hold Shift and press P, set a keyframe for both, and bring the scale to 0. And about right here, we'll bring it all the way up. We'll bring it out there, and then we'll continue it out just like that. And now we'll adjust the position so it stays with me. As I run, doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so now this looks okay. Not really. But that's it. That's our entire tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Just kidding. Alright, what we need to do is we need to layer, pre-compose this, and move all attributes, and this is going to be our map. Press OK. And now we're going to Layer, New, Adjustment Layer, and this is going to be our displace. And I'm just pressing Enter on the keyboard to change the name here. So go into our displace and add a displacement map to it. Okay, so basically what this is going to do is it's going to change everything that is in our composition, the red channel or the green channel, and change it and displace it. So if we get rid of this, we can see, just crank this up, that all of the red in our composition is being displaced, and that doesn't look very good. So we need to tell this plugin what map to use. So we'll change it from displace to the map. So now if we crank these up a little bit, you can already see we're getting a little bit of fringe around the edges here. And that is what we want. Now we're getting a little bit of trouble here on the edge, but we can just wrap pixels around, and that'll kind of hide it a little bit. We can kind of cheat it out. So that looks pretty good, and we can go back into the mask and change it so it's not as fast. But I think that's going to be all right. Press U on the keyboard if you would like to do that. I think I will. Just oops, change that just like that. Okay. And that looks pretty good. Now the next thing we want to do is kind of create the aura that comes around my body. And this is really easy to do. Press Ctrl Y on the keyboard and make a black solid. And this is going to be our aura. Okay, and I'm going to do Effect, Simulation, CC Particle World. And we're going to go and get rid of all of these because they are annoying and I don't want them. Alright, close out of that. Not really, close out of that. And go into our producer. And what we're going to do is we're going to animate the producer from about right here so that it follows me as I run up. So we'll just keyframe the position X, Y, and Z and go ahead and move that around. That looks good right there. Move it up just a little bit over. Just a touch to the right. And that is looking pretty good right there. Okay, so now what we want to do, this doesn't look that great, so let's go into our physics tab, or our physics tab, and lower the velocity, and put the gravity to a negative amount, and then change our inherent velocity just a touch, and bring the resistance up. And this will be important here in a minute. Get out of the physics tab and go to our particle, and from a line we want to do a faded sphere, so we get these magical little guys floating around, and just increase the size of them, and maybe, and let's just change them to a bluish color, maybe a little bit lighter blue than that. There we go. So that's kind of what we want, and I don't like how high they're going, so I'm going to change our radius and our Z y-axis and just kind of adjust that. And then in our physics tab, I'm going to go into the resistance and bring the resistance up, and maybe the velocity down. And now we're going to do Effect, Blur and Sharpen, CC Vector Blur. And this is how we're going to create that energy looking effect. So just crank the amount up and you kind of get this look, and press F4 on the keyboard and set it to Add. And then in our particles, CC Particle World, change the transfer mode to Add as well. And that's looking pretty good. Just do a RAM preview this real fast. So they're a little slow, so let's speed them up a little bit. Let's go back to our physics tab and lower the resistance, and maybe bring the velocity to about 0.5 or so. Alright, that's looking pretty nice right there. And about whenever I shoot the blast off, I want this particle to spread out a little bit. So let's keyframe the radius X, Y, and Z, and go forward a few frames and just kind of spread these guys out a little bit. Maybe not that much. Press U to get to your keyframes. Just click on these to snap forward. That might be pretty good. Okay. It's looking pretty good. So the next thing we want to do is create the particles that are around my hand as I emit the energy. Actually, we need to change the birth rate of these. So keyframe the birth rate as well. Change that to 1.5 or so. So they're not constantly going around. Alright, so let's shut these off. And, oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Anyways, let's go ahead and shut those guys off. And about right here, we want to go ahead and start creating some of those little energy particles. So what we can do is we can duplicate this layer. And this is going to be our hand particles. And CG particle world, just reset and shut the vector blur off. And get rid of all of our grids and guides again. Alright, so our keyframes are still there, so let's delete all these keyframes as well and redo it. Alright, so back in our particle world, let's keyframe the birth rate again. So let's go back a frame, pressing page up and page down to go back, and keyframe the birth rate from 0 to, let's say, 0.5, and turn these guys on. And then about here I want to set another keyframe on the birth rate. Go up a frame, set it to 2, down a frame, and set it to 0, so that we get a little burst of particles right there at the very end. So now we need to keyframe the producer and have it follow my hand. So let's go to the very first and just keyframe these guys. Alright, so they start. Jeez, sorry, let's bring the birth rate up just for a second. And go ahead and move the producer over, and then bring the birth rate back down. Just started my hand, and they come down a little bit. Down and around. Maybe not that far down. And it doesn't have to be exactly perfect because there's going to be a lot going on. You just kind of add to it. And now what we want to do is go into our physics and set the velocity to a negative amount. Negative 0.53 is good. And the gravity is 0. And the birth rate looks good. And then we'll turn our CC vector blur back on. Let's shut it off for just a second. In our particle, and change our particle color to a bluish color again. And turn our vector blur back on, and maybe lower it just a touch. So now we have something that looks like this. And if we add these together with our aura, we're already getting something that looks very nice. And now all we need to do is do something very, very easy. Let's actually put the hand particles under the aura. So now we do something very, very easy. We'll do layer, new, light. And this, fine, just a regular point light. And we're going to keyframe the light as well, following my hands. So we'll just move it over. Press P on the keyboard and just click the stopwatch, and just track my hands. It's a little tedious, so just enjoy the sound of silence for a moment as I click away. And these actually need to follow my hand as they come around. And I found what's easiest at this point when it's going so fast is just to do it frame by frame. Whoops. And we want it to stay about right there. Maybe a little bit. Whoops. Bring it down just a little bit. Alright, so now what we're going to do is create another layer, and we're going to call this an Optical Flare. And I am using an external plugin. I'm using the Video Copilot's Optical Flares, so I'm going to Effect, Video Copilot Optical Flares. And you can do this without Optical Flares, and it's real simple. You just have to basically create, I don't know, if you guys want to, I'll show you how to do it in another tutorial, but for the sake of time, we'll just use Video Copilot. And take the source type to track lights so that it's going to follow our light. And we'll go ahead and animate the brightness of it. So we want to start it about whenever the light begins to move. So bring the brightness down to 0. Bring it up to about 100 right here. And then I want it to increase in size by 175%. And then here I want it to go up to about 200 as well. Alright, so I don't like this optical flare, so I'm actually going to change it. Go into our options, preset browser, pro presets, and we're going to use the orb light, because it kind of has this little ring around it that I like. So now our last part, well, close to the last part, is creating the beam that comes out, and it's very simple. Just press Control Y and take our eyedropper tool and get this blue color here. Then press G on your keyboard to get your mask tools, and just kind of make that kind of shape, and set it to add. And then press MM on the keyboard and feather it out a touch. And then we can press MM again and keyframe the expansion of the beam. Take that to a negative amount, and then also we can press P and keyframe the position. Control C to get rid of that. So then now we have this messing up. Go into Layer, Solid Settings, and just bring out the width of it a little bit. And let me move the position just a touch as well. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's go and add a little bit of color correction. Let's press Control, cancel that. Layer, New, Adjustment Layer, and do Effect, Color Correction, Tint, and make this color kind of a dark blue. And the white color, it's a bright yellow. And just bring the amount of tint down to about 25%. This is pretty good. And it's not very noticeable, so we'll also do Effect, Color Correction, Curves, and we'll bring darks down just a touch, and red down a little bit as well. So there we have it. There's our, no it's not, we need to change our optical flare because it's acting kind of funny. That's very strange. I don't understand why it's doing that. Apparently because it's at 100. Alright, that should solve our problem. Just delete this keyframe. Alright, so this is what we have. that's looking pretty good, and you can actually go into your aura and duplicate it and make it a little bit brighter as well. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I had fun making it, and if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments, and I would like to know what kind of other tutorials you might be interested in, so you can just leave a comment for those as well. And one quick thing, press F4 on our keyboard, and everything that moves, just make it turn on your motion blur, and that'll kind of add a little bit more realism to it. So that's been another tutorial today, and I hope you liked it, and I will see you all next time.